That night, as the waves kissed the cliffs beneath their home in Madeira, Cristiano Ronaldo didn't expect anything unusual. It was just a peaceful dinner with his son. A rare moment of quiet between the chaos of training, media appearances, and endless responsibilities. But what started as a simple meal turned into something much deeper, more profound. It began when Cristiano Jr looked up from his plate, eyes calm, focused, and serious, and asked a question his father never saw coming. "Dea, do you think people love you, or just your goals?" It wasn't an accusation, nor was it a philosophical challenge. It was simply curiosity, unguarded and raw. The question hung in the air like a chord that refused to resolve. For a moment, the silence between them was louder than any stadium roar Ronaldo had ever experienced. And it was in that silence that everything shifted. The villa sat quietly under the soft glow of twilight, the air laced with salt, the hum of the Atlantic gently filling the background like a lullaby. Ronaldo entered, dressed simply, no designer logos, no entourage, no press, just a man returning to his sanctuary. In the dining room, warm golden light from a single chandelier flickered against polished mahogany. The air smelled of garlic, herbs, and something home-cooked. 2 plates sat ready, no guests, just father and son. Cristiano Jr, now in his early teens, was already seated, poking at the food with playful fingers, wearing a smile that mirrored his father's younger photos. "Smells good," Ronaldo said with a small grin as he entered, loosening the collar of his shirt. "You cooked again. Technically, I supervised," Jep equipped. They laughed, a simple, easy rhythm that felt real, unrehearsed, unfiltered. They started eating. The clinking of forks echoed between their short bursts of chatter. The conversation turned to training, then school, and eventually drifted into talk about aging, time in football. Jurta teased, "You still think about that header in the Euro final?" "Which one?" Ronaldo grinned, half smirking. "You know, I remember all of them." His tone was proud but not boastful, just a man reminiscing. Then, a subtle shift in energy. Ronaldo turned quiet. He gazed down at his plate. "But I remember your first football match more," he said quietly. Jer looked up, surprised, and for a moment, the only sound was the hush of waves rolling outside. Then came the question. "Dade, can I ask you something?" "Of course," Ronaldo replied, looking up, expecting another joke. Jeter paused, his voice softer now, more deliberate. "Do you think people love you or just what you do?" Cristiano froze. The fork stopped halfway to his mouth. The question wasn't cruel, it wasn't dramatic, but it cut deep. The kind of deep that made everything in the room slow down. The air became heavier, charged with unspoken emotion. Something had changed. The candlelight flickered quietly between them, casting golden halos across the table. Outside, the waves rolled on without urgency, like time had slowed to match the rhythm of their breathing. Cristiano Ronaldo leaned back slightly, arms resting on the edge of the table. He studied his son, not just as a boy, but as someone who had just asked the kind of question that adults often avoid. "Do people love you, or just what you do?" It echoed in his mind, refusing to go away. It wasn't an attack. There was no judgment in Jurda's voice, just honesty. "You mean like the fans?" Ronaldo asked cautiously. "Yeah." "Ja," replied. "The media, even some of your friends." He paused, then added, "Sometimes it feels like people love the goals, the records, the image, but not really." Ronaldo felt the weight of the words settle on his chest. He had faced entire stadiums chanting his name, been mobbed by fans in airports and streets from Madrid to Tokyo, Photographers had captured his smile 1,000,000 times. His face was on billboards. His name was on jerseys in every country he'd ever set foot in. But now, none of that seemed to matter. I think he started, choosing his words carefully, that for a long time, I believed being the best was the same as being loved. Ja leaned in slightly, attentive. But I've learned something over the years. Ronaldo continued. Love doesn't come from what you achieve. It comes from who you are when there's nothing left to prove. He looked down at his hands. And maybe I've spent too much time trying to be something for the world and not enough time just being me. The silence between them felt sacred, not awkward, just full of meaning, full of questions yet to be spoken, full of emotions yet to be unpacked. Jaeger didn't look away. He didn't fill the silence with jokes or distractions. He just sat with his father, giving him the space to say more if he needed to. You know, Ronaldo said after a long pause, I used to think if I wasn't perfect, people would forget me. And now? Jaeger asked softly. No, I wonder if being remembered is even the right goal. Ojia nodded slowly. Because I don't remember your hat, tricks the same way the world does, he said. I remember when you helped me study until midnight. When you skipped a gala to come to my science fair. When we made pancakes and you burnt them every time. Ronaldo laughed. Genuinely this time. You never let me live those pancakes down. Because they matter. Jada smiled. More than goals. Cristiano leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling for a moment. It's strange, he whispered. I've played in the biggest matches in the world, but I've never felt more exposed than I do right now. Is that bad? Jair asked. No, Ronaldo said, shaking his head slowly. It's real. And maybe that's what I've been missing. A breeze floated in from the open window. It carried the scent of the sea and the soft, distant sound of waves crashing against the rocks below. You're not asking because you doubt me, Ronaldo said finally. You're asking because you care. Exactly, Dra replied, and with that something unspoken passed between them. Not an answer, but understanding. They were no longer just father and son sharing dinner. They were two souls trying to understand what legacy really means. Beyond headlines, beyond goals, beyond time. The waves outside the villa grew louder as night fell fully. The sky, once lavender and gold, had now faded into a deep navy blue scattered with stars. The moon was full, casting silver lines across the ocean's dark surface, like brush strokes on an endless canvas. Inside, the candle on the table flickered low, but neither of them moved to replace it. They were still sitting in the same place, plates mostly untouched, hearts completely opened. Ronaldo had grown quiet again, not out of discomfort, but because he was finally thinking about something he had long avoided. You asked me something earlier, he said, voice lower now. Something no one's ever really asked me. Cristiano Jr looked at him attentively, waiting. Do people love me or just what I do? Ronaldo repeated softly, as if hearing it again helped him process it more deeply. And it made me realize something I haven't said out loud before. He leaned back, crossing his arms loosely, looking not at his son, but through the window, as though the sea itself might give him the words he was searching for. I'm afraid, he said. Jada blinked. Afraid of what? Ronaldo was silent for a few seconds. He rarely admitted fear. On the pitch, fear had no place. But this wasn't the pitch. This was life. I'm afraid that when I stop playing, I'll disappear. Jada tilted his head. What do you mean? My whole life. Ronaldo said slowly, has been built around being seen, being celebrated, being followed. Every goal, every award, every training session, it was all a step toward becoming someone unforgettable, someone whose name would echo through time. He paused, letting the weight of those words land. But now I wonder, when the cameras stop rolling, when the boots are put away, when the cheering fades, what will be left? You'll still be you, Jada said. Ronaldo turned to him. But do I even know who that is? The question was so honest, so bare, that it made Jia look away for a moment, not out of discomfort but out of respect. When I was young, Ronaldo continued, I didn't have much. You know that. My father, he struggled with a lot. He wasn't around in the way I needed. So I told myself that one day I'd be someone different, someone people looked up to, someone no one could forget. He clenched his hands slightly, old memories rising to the surface like ghosts. I thought success would fill the holes I carried from back then. But some nights, I still feel them, even after everything. Jen nodded, silent. And now that I'm older, Ronaldo said, voice cracking just a little, I realize I've spent so much time proving I wasn't him that I don't know if I've become who I wanted to be, or just the opposite of what I feared. The silence that followed wasn't empty, sacred. Then Gia asked, do you miss him? Your dad? Cristiano hesitated. The question reached into a part of him he rarely visited. I miss what we never got to have, he said finally. There's a version of him I sometimes imagine. One who sat at the table like this, who asked me about my dreams, who stayed sober long enough to remember my birthday. He swallowed hard, but that version only exists in my mind. Jar reached out and gently touched his father's wrist. You became the version you needed, he said. For me. Ronaldo looked at him, eyes shining but not yet teary. But have I given you enough of me? The real me? Jer didn't answer immediately. He took a breath, then said, I think I've seen pieces. More lately than before. But maybe that's something we both need to keep building. There it was. The truth neither had said, but both had felt. Ronaldo whispered, I don't want you to carry the same silence I did. Then let's talk, Jada said. Let's keep talking. And so they did, for hours, about everything. About how Ronaldo fell to his first Ballon d'Or. About the pressure of living in a hotel room at 18 in a foreign country, alone. About nights after a loss when he couldn't sleep, so he'd run at 2 a.m. just to quiet the noise in his head. Jer asked questions he'd never dared to ask before. Did you ever feel like quitting? Wes, Ronaldo admitted. Twice. When? Once after my father died, and once when the whole world turned on me over a missed penalty. Both times I felt like a fraud, like the dream was crumbling. So why didn't you? Ronaldo smiled faintly, because deep down, I knew I had to become the man my younger self needed, and one day the father you deserved. Jar looked down, blinking fast. You've always been enough, Dad, he said, even when you didn't see it. Ronaldo's chest rose with a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. That night, in the glow of candlelight and quiet vulnerability, a new chapter began, not just in their relationship, but in Ronaldo's understanding of himself. The candle had nearly burned itself out, the soft golden flame, now a quiet dance of memory more than light. Outside, the waves pressed against the cliffs in rhythm, like the pulse of something ancient, something eternal. Inside the villa, time felt suspended, as if the world had given them permission to finally pause. Cristiano Ronaldo leaned back in his chair, shoulders slightly slouched, no longer carrying the posture of the world's greatest footballer, but instead the weight of a father simply trying to understand himself. "You know," he began, voice low and steady, "I've always been seen as this machine. The abs, the records, the work ethic. Always hungry, always chasing." His fingers absently traced the rim of his glass. "People admire that. They celebrate it. But sometimes I wonder, do they even see the person behind all of it?" He looked up at his son, eyes searching. "Or is that all I am now? A brand? A statue?" Cristiano Jr didn't speak, not yet. He listened, and Ronaldo continued. "There were days I didn't even know what city I was waking up in. Madrid, Manchester, Turin, Riyadh. The hotel rooms all blurred together. The goals kept coming. The praise too. But at night, sometimes it felt like I was just trying to outrun something I couldn't name." His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed on. "I gave everything to this game. Every part of me, every wound, every hour of sleep, and I don't regret it. Not really. But I do wonder, did I give too much of myself to people who only loved the image, and not enough to the people who really needed me?" The candle flickered, casting long shadows across his face. Jr leaned forward slightly, his young face calm but filled with quiet emotion. "I think you tried to give everything to everyone," he said softly. "But you're still here, and that counts for more than you think." Ronaldo smiled, faintly grateful. "Do you know how strange it feels," he said, "to be known by millions and still feel misunderstood?" He let the question hang in the air. "They call me CR7, a symbol, a force. But that's not who brushes your teeth beside you in the morning. That's not who laughs too hard when he burns toast." Jeta chuckled gently. "CR7 didn't teach me how to ride a bike," he said. "You did." Ronaldo's eyes softened. "That's what I want to be remembered for," he said. "Not the statues, not the highlights, but the little things, the human things." He paused. "The things the world never sees, but you'll never forget." The room felt warmer now, even as the night deepened. Ronaldo stood slowly and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. He looked out at the stars above the Atlantic, endless and quiet. "Do you ever think about the future?" he asked. "What people will say about you?" Jr stood to, joining him. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I remember what really matters isn't what they say. It's what I know." He looked at his father. "Not the headlines, not the legend, just you." Ronaldo turned toward him, and in his son's eyes, he saw something that made his throat tighten. A reflection of everything he'd ever wanted to be, and everything he still could become. "You make me want to be better," he whispered. "Not faster, not stronger, just better." Jr nodded. "Then that's what you'll be." For a while, they stood side by side in silence, two silhouettes framed by starlight, no longer just father and son, but man and mirror, legacy and future, wound and healing. And in that stillness, a quiet truth settled into the room, like the final note of a long, powerful song. The world might never stop celebrating the legend of Cristiano Ronaldo, but in this house, behind these walls, beneath these stars, he was no longer chasing greatness. He was becoming whole. A few days after their conversation, Cristiano surprised Jr with a quiet proposal to visit the neighborhood he grew up in, Rua de Quintafalco, tucked into the hills of Santo Antnio, high above the glitz of the tourist districts of Madeira. It wasn't a media stunt, no cameras, no entourage, just a father and son, sneakers on pavement. walking through the alleys where greatness had once been just a faraway dream. The roads were narrower than Cristiano remembered. The paint on the walls of old buildings had faded more than he thought it would. The small pitch near the apartments, where he had first learned to shoot, now had rusted goals and weeds pushing through the concrete. But it was all still there, unchanged and yet transformed by memory. He turned to Jir, who looked around quietly, absorbing every cracked sidewalk, every wall scribbled with faded graffiti, every open window with a breeze of laundry flapping in it. "This is where I used to run," Ronaldo said, pointing to a long sloped street. "Every morning evening, no fancy trainers, just hunger, just need." Dreed followed the path with his eyes. "Did you ever think you wouldn't make it?" Ronaldo smiled. "All the time. But I told myself I couldn't afford not to." He paused in front of the tiny two-bedroom apartment where his family had once lived. His mother, his siblings, and his father who came and went like a ghost. "We had 4 kids in here," he said, his voice quieter now. "No air conditioning, no private rooms. Sometimes no food in the fridge. My mom worked non-stop. My father drank more than he should have." He looked down, kicking at a pebble with his shoe. "There were nights I cried myself to sleep because I thought the world didn't know I existed." Jed was silent beside him. He didn't ask questions. He didn't try to fill the space. He let his father speak. "I used to lie awake and listen to the neighbors' televisions through the thin walls. I remember thinking if I ever got out of here, I'd never forget this sound." He paused, tilting his head slightly as if listening again. "Sometimes I still hear it, even in silence." They walked farther up the hill, toward the old field where Ronaldo had first been scouted. The fence was broken now, the chalk lines long gone. But as they approached, a group of boys were kicking a flat ball around, laughing loudly, their voices rising into the dusk. One of them looked up and froze, nudging the others. Slowly, the ball rolled to Ronaldo's feet. He stopped it gently, then looked at the boys. "Can I?" he asked, smiling. They nodded, stunned. In a single, fluid motion, he tapped the ball up, balanced it on his knee, flicked it behind his back, and let it settle at his feet again. The boys burst into cheers, but Ronaldo raised a finger. "I used to be you," he said. "Don't ever forget that." He kicked the ball gently back to them and turned to his son. "That was me once, just a kid with a ball and a hunger so loud it drowned everything else." They sat on the steps outside the pitch, watching the boys play. The sun had dipped below the mountains now, casting long shadows down the valley. "It's strange," Ronaldo said, breaking the quiet. "How you can build empires and still feel like you're just running from a cracked pavement somewhere." Gerda looked at him. "You're not running anymore, Dad. You're remembering." Ronaldo nodded, his eyes on the boys. "I needed to remember this," he said, "because sometimes, in the private jets, in the stadiums, you forget that it all began with scraped knees and no dinner, and a dream no one else believed in." He stood, brushing dust from his jean. "But now I realize I wasn't just trying to prove something to the world." He looked down at his son. "I was trying to prove something to that little boy who used to sleep right there," he said, pointing toward the apartment window. "That he was worth it, that he mattered, that he wasn't invisible." They stood in the fading light, silence thick with memory, and then Gia said something Ronaldo hadn't expected. "I think you've shown him. I think you've shown me too." Ronaldo exhaled, the kind of exhale that feels like release. The kind that says, for once, you don't have to run anymore. You can just be. And so they walked back down the hill, not as a legend returning to his roots, not as a tourist to his own history, but as a father showing his son that even greatness is born in places the world overlooks. That evening, back in the villa, Ja sat quietly at the dining table, while Ronaldo stood by the window once more, staring at the stars over the water. "Do you think people would still believe in me?" he asked softly, "if they knew how broken I used to feel?" Dra answered without hesitation, "I think they'd believe in you more." And in that moment, in the stillness of a home that held both past and present, Cristiano Ronaldo realized something that would stay with him forever. He had spent his life building a legacy the world could admire. But the legacy that mattered most had just walked beside him through the streets of his childhood, holding his hand without needing to say a word. Later that night, after their return from the neighborhood, the villa was quiet again, but this silence felt different, full of meaning, layered with memory. The ocean whispered softly beyond the terrace, and the night air had grown cooler. Inside, the lights were dimmed, a soft instrumental tune playing faintly in the background. Ja sat cross-legged on the couch, a mug of warm milk in his hands, his eyes not on the TV but on the space in front of him. Cristiano, barefoot now, wearing a faded hoodie, moved slowly through the living room, a slight ache in his knees reminding him of every game played, every battle fought on the pitch. As he passed behind the couch, Ja spoke without looking up. "Do you know what it's like to be your son?" The question came quietly, but it landed with the weight of 1,000 unsaid things. Ronaldo paused, then slowly walked around and sat beside him, their shoulders almost touching but not quite. "Tell me," he said, his voice steady but cautious. Jita stared ahead, the mug still warm between his palms. "It's like living in a mirror that's too big," he said, "where everyone expects to see your reflection, but no one really notices you." He looked down, fingers tracing the rim of the cup. "At school, I'm not just another kid. I'm Cristiano's son. Every move I make, every test I take, every match I play, someone's always watching, waiting, comparing." Ronaldo listened in complete silence. Not the kind of silence that avoids truth, but the kind that honors it. "Sometimes I don't even know what I want," Jada continued, "because I'm not sure if it's mine or something I think I'm supposed to want. Because you had it, or because they expect me to chase it." He looked at his father then, finally meeting his eyes. "I don't blame you, but it's hard." Ronaldo felt the breath catch in his throat. "I never wanted you to carry that," he said quietly. "But I see now maybe I handed it to you without even realizing." Ja nodded slowly. "You didn't force it, but the world did. And I didn't know how to tell you, because I didn't want to seem ungrateful." He took a deep breath. "But sometimes I just want to be enough. Not as your son, just me." The words hit like a wave, a soft but undeniable truth. For a long moment, Ronaldo didn't speak. He looked at his son, really looked, not as a child, not as an heir, but as a human being trying to be seen. "You are enough," he said finally. "Not because of what you do, not because of what I've done, but because you are you. And if I've failed to show you that, then I've failed at the only job that really matters." He reached out, resting a hand on Jurda's shoulder. "You don't have to be me. In fact, I hope you won't be. I hope you'll be better, wiser, freer." Jurda's eyes began to glisten, but he blinked the tears away. "Sometimes I don't even know who that is yet," he said. That's okay, Ronaldo replied. You're not supposed to. You're still becoming. We all are. Even me. He let out a quiet laugh. Especially me. They sat like that for a while. Two shadows under soft light. Father and son no longer orbiting each other through the gravity of expectations, but now sitting side by side in the open space of understanding. You know, Jeta said after a long silence, the thing that makes it worth it is when you're just dad. The guy who messes up lyrics in the car. The guy who tries to dance and fails. The guy who laughs at his own jokes before finishing them. Ronaldo chuckled. I'm really that bad? Ha! Terrible, Jela grinned. But that's who I need. Not the legend, just the man. Ronaldo nodded. Then that's who I'll be. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the floor. It's ironic, isn't it? I've spent my life making the world see me. And now, all I want is for you to see me clearly, and to be seen truly by you. Gia leaned back, his voice softer now. I do. Dad, I really do. The wind outside brushed gently against the windows, and the song playing in the background faded into silence. No applause, no roar of crowds, just the quiet, sacred sound of two souls finally meeting in the middle. That night, Cristiano Ronaldo didn't go to bed thinking about records or trophies or legacy. He went to bed thinking about how lucky he was to be loved not for the millions who watched him play, but by the one who watched him when he wasn't performing. And in the stillness of that midnight hour, in the comfort of knowing he was finally understood, he slept deeper than he had in years. Years passed, as they always do, quietly and relentlessly. The world kept spinning. Records continued to be broken, new stars were born on the pitch, and stadiums that once echoed Ronaldo's name now roared for a different generation. But in a quiet corner of Madeira, far from the noise and glare, time moved differently. The villa still stood tall on the cliffs, its view over the Atlantic unchanged, but inside, everything had shifted, not in decor or design, but in meaning. Cristiano Jr, now a young man, walked through the same hallway where he once ran with socks slipping on marble, where he asked questions that shook the foundation of legends. His shoulders were broader, his gaze more certain, but the boy inside him, the one who once wondered if the world only loved his father's goals, still lived quietly behind his eyes. On this evening, a soft breeze carried the scent of ocean and old memories. Ronaldo sat on the balcony, not in training gear, not in a suit, but in a simple black shirt and sandals, a cup of coffee cooling in his hand. His hair had more silver now, and his face had softened, not just with age, but with peace. Jed approached and sat beside him. They didn't speak at first. They didn't need to. The silence between them had long since become a language of its own. After a while, Jed reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper, aged, creased, carefully preserved. He handed it to his father. I found this in the drawer next to the old piano, he said. Ronaldo unfolded it. It was the letter he'd written all those years ago. The one he never gave Jr, the one filled with fears, hopes, regrets, and love so raw he didn't know if he had the right to say it out loud. He read it slowly, quietly, the paper shaking slightly in his hands. When he finished, he looked at his son, eyes glassy. You weren't supposed to see this, he said. Jota smiled. I needed to. They both looked out at the sea, where the sun was beginning to sink into the horizon, turning the water into liquid gold. You know, Jeta said, I used to think legacy was about what people said about you after you were gone. Statues, speeches, numbers. But now I think it's simpler. He turned to his father. It's how people live because of you, not the crowd, just the ones who shared your table, your time. Ronaldo let out a long breath, setting the letter down on the table. I spent so long trying to be remembered by the world, and all along, the only person I really needed to be remembered by was you. A long silence followed, the kind that doesn't ask for more words, the kind that simply lets truth settle like dust in golden light. Jr stood and walked back inside briefly. When he returned, he was holding a small, handwritten card. He set it in front of his father. On the front was a simple sentence, the first goal of every day. Ronaldo opened it. Inside was a photo of them from years ago, making pancakes in the kitchen, both of them laughing, flour everywhere. Underneath, Jr had written, "You kept your promise, and I'll carry it forward." Cristiano said nothing, but a tear escaped down his cheek, and he didn't wipe it away. He didn't need to be strong here. He just needed to be real. As the stars began to pierce the sky and the waves continued their endless rhythm below, the father and son sat together, no longer defined by legacy or pressure or the noise of the world. What remained was what always mattered most: presence, understanding, and love. Cristiano Ronaldo, once the most talked about name in football, realized in that moment that the game had ended long ago. But his greatest victory was just beginning. And this time, the stadium was a balcony, the cheers were the crash of waves, and the trophy was being remembered by the one who mattered most. And so, as the waves rolled endlessly beneath the cliffs of Madeira, and the stars began to light up the sky like quiet echoes of time, one truth became undeniably clear. Not about goals, not about fame, not even about greatness, but about presence. About choosing love when no one's watching. About waking up and deciding who truly deserves the first goal of your day. Cristiano Ronaldo, a man who had conquered the world, found his greatest victory not in stadiums, but at his own dinner table. Not in the roar of millions, but in the quiet voice of his son asking, "Do they love you or just what you do?" And in answering that question, not with words but with honesty, with time, and with love, he rewrote everything, not just for himself, but for the one who would carry that legacy forward, not on his back, but in his heart. Because in the end, the world may forget your trophies, your stats, your moments of glory, but the people who sat across from you at the table, they'll remember the way you showed up, the way you made them feel, the way you loved, and sometimes that's the only legacy that truly matters.